Welcome everybody. We have a roundtable now with our Zap.org team, and I'm sitting with the lead developers, Adam Minka and Eric Monganero. I will let them have a brief introduction of themselves and we'll jump straight into it. Zap 101. All right, guys, so can you just give us a brief overview of your involvement with the project and a little bit of background of yourselves, your careers, and the projects that you've helped to develop?
Yeah.
I think I met Adam when I was doing a coinvention, right?
Yeah.
So I met him, talked about a lot about crypto. He's did a lot of ICOs, right?
Yeah.
Coming out from Consensus, and I was like, whoa, well, he knows a lot about what's going on. And we started not just doing normal convention stuff, but that's kind of like the whole flavor of what we're trying to paint here is having a hackathon and, you know, bringing like innovation to the market as well as people speaking, because there is a place for both. And, you know, this is software, but it's not the thing.
Great. So you guys both have a history of helping to host hackathons and have been involved in this space for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Eric and I started off initially working kind of, you know, on this conference. And one of the things that Eric highlighted was we just loved playing around with code a lot. And there was a lot of interesting things that kind of came out, you know, and nobody really knew, you know, what technology was going to be best or, you know, what was going on. We still don't really know that, but
Sure.
we just started live streaming, you know, us just playing around with code and set up like a development community. And we're just looking for projects to really dig into. Eventually, you know, I kind of beelined it for Zap, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But one of the main reasons is another person that we met there was Nick, you know, Nick Spanos. He was a speaker at the conference. And, you know, we started hanging out with him a lot more. I knew who he was, and it's a lot of fun.
I had to go help my friend. And I was like, I saw y'all in the lobby, and I was like, oh, I should probably hang out. But my friend's lost in the city. I go get him. You know, I was like, oh, great, you're here. Cool. See you later.
Yeah.
Great. So you guys met, eventually you started playing around, you found out about Zap, you got involved,
Yes.
and now you guys are leading the project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with like a duocracy, honestly, because this is an open source project, and I'm really trying to, you know, see a great foundation that was laid for the actual Zap protocol, and now we just have to develop Zap applications.
All right, so
Zaps, you know?
let's jump into what Zap is. If you could give us a brief overview in the most simplified manner of what you think Zap is.
What's that? It's like Chainlink, Uniswap,
No, it's like
and Ethereum combined, right? You remember that's what the community member said?
Yeah,
No, but it's
that's what they say. So we'll
yeah,
just say that.
Yeah, it's really there's three foundational components of Zap that are very interesting. And you know, Nick really drove the forefront of this. And the first is really just bonding curves, which are used ubiquitously throughout DeFi.
It utilizes bonding curves.
Yes, leverages bonding curves. The second is this Oracle mechanism, which allows data to come from off-chain or, you know, monitors on-chain events and communicates into smart contracts.
And that's important because that is part of the Oracle problem that is so often not solved. We need off-chain data to be brought into the blockchain and the smart contracts.
The best way I think about it is that we're so used to having a camera and like a keyboard around us that we forget that, like robots, you have to have the input from somewhere. But in a smart contract, it's kind of like blind to, on purpose, to the outside world because we can't actually trust the data coming through unless it comes through that, you know, sealed channel.
Yeah, and I think at this point as well is, you know, a solution before that earlier was like a 90s voting system in like a token curated registry format.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get too much into it, but essentially it would go up to voting rounds. People would say, did this happen or did it not? And people that hadn't, you know, voted correctly would win. But that's prime for disruption and like, you know, very easily manipulatable. So this outside data that you get from a, you know, validated source from the real world is really important.
So, and we'll come back to your third key point of Zap, but just to recap. So the first, utilizing bonding curves, then you have this Oracle solution that's helping to create models with accurate data from off-chain. And the third point?
Really comes down to sub-tokenization or fractionalization, right? So you have to have something that's divisible, right? So you know, in the same way you use an ERC20 or a cryptocurrency to denominate something, right? You have to be able to have this pricing mechanism with the bonding curve, something that you're going to deliver as a service. And then the third component is how do you represent individual ownership or represent utility of these services, and that's the third component.
And you do that through the bonding curve as well. So on the bonding curve, you can actually create your own curves with Zap.
Yes.
Right? You can, at the bottom base, you have the number of participants over the value.
Yes.
So like, and that comes down to I guess our native, you know, sub token called dots, where you would have a supply created for you. So therefore it can be used across chains. Something needs to be like airdropped or created in another chain where we're going to be implemented, then you will be able to have that supply. But you can also alternatively just create your own actual ERC20 token as the supply of that automated liquidity, I guess, function.
And you mentioned dots. Can you explain what you mean by dots?
Dots are really just, like I said, you could either have your own currency or our common currency that is like a Satoshi is the Bitcoin.
Right.
So you can just say against the supply of what? And you can define that earlier on. And that's kind of what me and Adam have been working on, is making an application to really take all that really important information and try to really abstract and make it easier so everyone can be like, oh, okay, I'm selling my data. This makes sense because it looks like it visually.
If you can, I guess, like to wrap it up really simply, you essentially set the amount of a token that you would like to issue for a specific service. And then with that, you create a deterministic price depending on how many are in existence based on this bonding mechanism. And then you allow to deliver on the service through a function that we call redeeming of the dot. So this overriding mechanism where you're burning and creating tokens is called continuous token generation. And it was, they called these curation markets, and De La Rouvier had written an article about it. The team went kind of really deep with it. And I think, we're kind of at the point where, all this is coming full circle. And, there's a lot of utility for it, currently, whether that's synthetics or whatever it might be. It's really cool.
And can you talk to us about why early adopters are rewarded and how that relates to the bonding curve and the deterministic pricing index that you set?
Yeah.
Like, step one, I think, right here is that for those who are listening, the reason why we're talking about this is because in a maker-taker model where you're buying and selling on any book on Binance, you are trading against a bot. There are walls set for traps to be for people who are entering the market, small person who wants to be able to interact with this asset, get some or sell it at will without having front running or this stacked book against the small guy, and that's what that deterministic prices that he was bouncing off of. You can know exactly. So even if there are people buying and selling, you know exactly where it's going to be.
Yeah.
It is predetermined. That's what the shape of the curve, and why we talk about it so often, is because what you're saying, incentivizing early delivery. You can tell that if you can control how it goes up, whatever your asset or your services, then those people at the very beginning actually have a very decent price, and it actually has a way for everybody to enjoy in that supply.
So the Zap's mechanisms work in a very unique fashion, kind of extending on what he was saying and trying to answer, I guess, yours and bridge the gap here, is they work in a very unique fashion. Since we're working with cryptocurrency, we can do things that were never possible before, right? The money itself is programmable when you're talking about Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. We have the capability to have it follow a set of rules. Humans can't do that, right? They can take money, they can go away. So what we have now is when we write a smart contract and you're abiding by an agreed set of rules, kind of like in the case of Robinhood, I mean, they just shut the machine off when you're playing it, right? That's what happened recently. With Zap, what you have to do is you have to have some skin in the game for the price to actually go up. So it's not a fake price. It's an actual true market value. It's much like if anybody's ever taken economics and you look at a supply curve and a demand curve, if you can think about, depending on certain market conditions, you might want a down curve, you might want an up curve. You could have a flat curve, right? You could have a static price if you're really good and you know what your price is. But one of Zap's unique value props, to your point, is that early adopters can get rewarded, right? Or if you have an asset that is, as it becomes more abundant, becomes less valuable, right? You can price things like these. So Zap has a very unique capability in its bonding curves. A lot of people are using what's more accurately automated market making. So they may have a pricing oracle and it's setting and it's saying, hey, look, this is the price. You might get flash loan attacked. Something crazy might happen. Zap is really built to follow a static set of rules at the outset, reward people or change the price depending on the factors that you set. And everybody can agree going into it.
So that leads us into the curated marketplace and creating the market makers.
That's correct.
So I'll let you expand on why Zap is so important for people who want to cut out all of the middlemen as part of that process.
Yeah, so I think that it's like, what was the killer app, Uniswap? We can, if you want to create your own Uniswap in a quick manner, but not have it traded on a public, token, then that's perfect. Or if you're making like a closed system as your business model, then you don't want to have it be exposed to your supply to the outside world, but you can choose to. And that's kind of like just one of the features.
Yeah, I think, I think this is really interesting because you hear, anybody who's going on a Reddit message board or watch some goofy video on the internet, they talk about like, oh, pull the buy wall or pull the sell wall, right? And they're talking about this thing. And basically, like, you could be trading on Binance and you think you got $1 million. But then when every buy order clears out from underneath you, the rug pull, the traditional rug pull was, oh, they've put the price up to a certain point, and then you just pull all the buy orders. Now who are you going to sell it to? These mechanisms that are in place to be able to lock liquidity, to guarantee that there's something backing up a specific service. This is something that's really evolving, and it's at its infancy. I know people like to think, oh, this DeFi stuff's great. What we're doing right now is going to look like what the 90s looks to us now in web, right? It's going to be box like HTML stuff. As a matter of fact, many DeFi sites do look like that. So we're really early in the game, and I think people have to understand how significant mechanisms these are.
And create new terms.
Yeah.
And create new ideas that are associated with the advent of programmable money.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point and a lead into right now. It's a big discussion. Everyone's selling our data, and there's this idea that eventually in the future we'll be able to own our own data.
Yes.
And we will be the ones who can profit off of our data.
Yes, 100%.
And our own information, our contacts, our influence. So can you talk about how Zap can help someone become self-sovereign in that way?
Okay, let's think about tools that we really like right now that we're trying to integrate with Zapier, all these things that actually do help your life. We want to be able to actually have what our team is really working on is being able to bridge that gap, and tools that are low code, no code, that actually are like what you're saying, how you can sell your data and really easily.
To provide a platform for that.
Yeah, because you can actually, with a connection like that or something like Parabola, you can actually go into a Google Drive document that actually has information and sell it. You actually have to own this much of this token or bond this much to it, and it opens up to you.
And what's interesting is when you talk about incentivizing someone, an early adopter, if you have, a bonding curve that might go in an upward slope.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that with the data, the more accurate the data is, the more people are going to trust and want that data. And I think that's part of the incentivization for early adopters is if we're not only putting out data, but it's good data, then there's value in that.
So we're talking about oracles then. So we're talking about what he said, synthetic elements. Like all these things need an actual way, just like any robotics, because we talk about what do we already know. Like blockchain virtual machines, whatever, it is related a lot to robotics. Like the robot needs to see, hear. Otherwise, if you don't give it those sensors, it's
It won't
working.
execute.
Sure,
the
but there's
program
even the robot itself, even in standard robotics, can't trust its environment, and it has to do all these things to make sure that I'm not bumping into a wall, or if it's not 1,000 degrees out and I'll melt or something. So what we're doing with an Oracle is to not just have pricing fees, but actual events happening in the world in text. So we can provide a rich thing. Because
You can provide context.
Yeah, the context is something that a lot of people are using. It's something I thought was a great way of explaining it. It's like when I saw something like Dodo decks or synthetics, because we are interested in being able to explode free trade. What's happening with GameStop and having like that type of control over the market sucks, and that we want to we have to like, okay, what's the price of this right now? Can we back it up against something? Can we control the supply of this thing? All answered by our protocol.
I think a lot of this can be solved by I think at risk of going to kind of like meta, what I'm about to say is like ancient Greece talked about like things, right? Now we're like, oh, everything's data. Like everything is data. Like everything, your entire world, everything you perceive, anything can be data. So talking about
What
like
is that, Newton's demon or something?
Yeah, it's Oracle. Or I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah, what is that? Is that Newton's demon? What was that? Basically, if you had like keep track of all the information inside of that.
Yeah.
Like
you could
out of entropy.
But data is the new oil.
And data.
It's so
We're
valuable.
calling it data now because we're so driven on like Boolean systems and like all this
Yeah.
all this crazy stuff. But
The universe itself is
essentially, how do you have trustless mechanisms with machines? Like we're bridging the gap, right? How do you have trustless mechanisms, but
Right.
also all these things we enjoy on a daily basis?
And that is
lossless.
part of the Oracle problem.
Yes. And then the second component of that, I guess, from a larger standpoint, is like, how do you actually sell things that you know to be valuable when you can't find a marketplace, you can't price it, you don't know who it's valuable to? For instance, a boat might be worth, in Connecticut, $4,000 in the summer and worth, $0 in the winter because the ice is frozen, right? And you have to have some kind of price elasticity. So there's the
and
oracles.
no one in Denver because there's no boats.
Yeah. So it's just like there's a very complicated set of problems, and if Zap, if I could explain in the simplest form, is like we're giving you like a computer to be able to navigate DeFi with, right? You're gonna build all kinds of stuff, and you're gonna make pricing curves, and you're gonna do all this stuff. But we have a basic rule set, a protocol that's gonna allow you to price things, create oracles, feed in data, and all this type of stuff.
All right, and just for the sake of times, I would like to get into next, where do you see Zap fitting into the universe of multi-chains?
Yeah, we were talking about dots beforehand. The dots are that's the reason why we're not a security. Like we have this huge utility that is associated with being able to essentially airdrop to the other chain that we just become a part of. We're like, oh, you know what?
So you mentioned you could airdrop.
Yeah, well, yeah, because
It's not an airdrop.
It's not an airdrop where you're giving away free coins. It's like getting your own token on the other chain.
You create a bridge.
We're talking about a bridge between Binance Smart Chain.
Right,
Tron.
interoperability between those other
and we're
marketplaces.
like that's why I'll probably do a workshop on the hard hat instance that we have, because a lot of chains like IOHK is going with an Ethereum virtual machine. So there's like a really great use case for that, and we can bring the protocol directly to it.
I think there's a lot of interesting things to be done with bridges, but I think like multi-chain in general is just how do you look at the larger ecosystem, and how do you promote, like you were saying, interoperability? I think where Zap fits in all of that is just given the three mechanisms, and getting I guess there's like a vision that I have of it, and then there's the actual like what is the most immediate. Everybody's talking about token bridges, but the real cool stuff about like multi-chain and being able to go off chain and up into the upper layers of blockchain is like lower transaction fees. You're not encumbered by the blockchain, although it provides many benefits. Blockchains are inherently, they're not meant to be this fastest thing ever.
It's not a dictatorship. It's a consensus.
Yeah, it's meant to be incredibly redundant. So as you go up chain and cross chain, you're going to be able to enhance things like Bitcoin, you're going to be able to enhance. We've looked at Bitcoin really hard, by the way, but
So that leads us kind of into wrapping tokens.
yes. Yeah.
So, okay, wrapping tokens is just like the same problem as we were discussing about synthetics. We have to actually have these tethered to something. What is it tethered to? And was it backed up by? And you can see there's a lot of really good solutions out there. And I think that that's what we're implementing. We're like, we're inspired by the open source projects like RenVM. Like, how can we create our own networks? How we can keep that decentralized and interact with it? It's like, it's inspiring.
I think kind of like making a segue from that point too, there's a lot of custodial versus non-custodial, and right, we're both non-custodial people. Like, we don't want people to have control over it. But the good thing about consensus networks, right, is like a consensus mechanism is that you can have, a network, a dark pool, a whatever, holding custody of your stuff, but you still have complete, control and access to it. Much in the same way, like blockchain, like people don't think about Bitcoin, it's not on your phone. It's on the blockchain. You do not hold it, right? You just know the right set of, letters and numbers that can get you to be able to sign something to send it somewhere else, right? So like there's a lot of cool things wrapped within that just statement alone. Like when you're talking about moving up layer, multi-chain, and being able to bridge things, jumping on and off and do all this other wonderful stuff.
So we're getting kind of like, we're looking at the Web3 development.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when you say that, I'm always thinking about wallets are separate from the network, from the node. Because I don't care about if it's Binance Smart Chain or Ethereum. I'd like to have Ethereum go crazy. If solutions don't work out, it's all good.
You use your private key from one
But
chain.
in my thought process, especially like during this hackathon, we get people to know where the wallet is, what the actual thing that we're working with, and then how to interact with it. And I think that type of being agnostic allows you to be anti-fragile and like to be able to go with the flow. Like we care about the ideas behind it, and then the language that we program it might change.
I think right now in blockchain we're building Steam cars, and a lot of projects are building Steam cars. Are like, wow, Steam is so powerful, and like where we're going is like Tesla's. Like we're jumping up, and we're like, okay, we're
self-driving.
self-driving Steam cars.
That's what I think is so exciting about the Zap project is that you guys are figuring out these problems now that are solving what we're experiencing in real time in crypto.
And pain.
However, you're also helping to build a tool that can be translated to someone in 10 years and a platform to provide people with their own business, really, if you wanted to.
We just don't even know what's going to happen, so we want to be able to like give people the tools.
Eric and I really have like what's in front of us and what we're trying to accomplish, and some of that stuff's like, to us it's super like dull compared to like what we know is capable, but it's really important for the mass market, because if we can get it in the hands of other people, then it's like it would be incredible.
I'm like, yeah, listen, we're in here for the long haul. We're like, Nick is talking to me about how he's running this Doge party in 2014. I see my old landlord. I'm like, what are these people doing? I know about Dogecoin, but it's like, oh, we're here about that,
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. This has been fascinating. I'm excited to see what the future holds for Zap. And I know that the community is really hoping to see some new UI, some teasers. So stay tuned and visit zap.org for more information on the project. And up next, we have the Introduction to DeFi with Professor Jamil Sheikh. Stay tuned.
Thanks, everybody.